Hi, well, my name is Liz, and at the moment I'm 63 years old. Um, I guess I was diagnosed with fatty liver disease sometime in 2022. I'd had some vague and intermittent symptoms, I would say, for a number of years, which arguably tied in with the blood results. I'd felt lethargic, I'd suffered from some nausea, I just felt tired and I'd had some upper right quadrant pain, but I also had some other abdominal pain and it was nothing specific. So I suppose I just kind of downplayed it and minimized it. My mum passed away in November 2022. And one of the things on her death certificate was liver disease, liver metastases. And I suppose once she had died, I suddenly became aware of my symptoms and the fact that perhaps I needed to do something about it. So she realised that I needed some blood tests and undertook those. The blood tests were a bit abnormal and she wanted to drill down into some further tests. And she took things very seriously. And she also, because of the abnormal liver blood tests, wanted me to have a scan. And she asked me if I wanted to be referred to hepatology. I can never get that word right, but I think it's hepatology. And I seem to think that that was a sensible thing to do. And so she went ahead with that referral. But the hospital actually weren't keen to see me. And my GP had a bit of a fight on her hands. She actually undertook some more in-depth tests and quoted guidelines at the hospital before I was seen. She did arrange for me to have an ultrasound, and the results came back. And as I said, she referred me to the hospital. I got called to the hospital for a FibroScan, and it was a specialist nurse who did that. So it was a couple of months before I got a letter out of the blue through the post from a consultant I'd never heard of and never met. And he indicated that I most likely had fatty liver disease, as my GP had suspected. The letter, as well as giving me that information that seemed alarming, gave me the advice to try and lose a bit of weight if I could and try to avoid alcohol. So, on the one hand, I seem to be getting some quite serious information. And in terms of the action that I was to take, I was just to try to lose a bit of weight and I was just to try to avoid alcohol. And that is actually written in the letter. So I really didn't know what to make of that. And it also said that they thought it would be wise to follow me up in clinic. I did try to lose weight, and probably by the time I went for my appointment with the consultant, I'd maybe lost about half a stone. Um, he was very good. He was very pleasant. Seemed to give me plenty time. He gave me a thorough examination, and I said, I haven't a clue what these things stand for in your letter. I don't know what they mean. I haven't got any information. Could you please give me some detail? And he said, well, you've got fatty liver and fat can become inflamed and then it becomes stiff. So it becomes fibrotic. It scars your liver basically, and that can affect its functioning. And I said, but presumably I'm not too bad because I've never really drank much and I know I'm overweight, but I've lost half a stone. And he said, well, it is actually. He said, it's at the severe end of scarring. And I said, you're not talking cirrhosis. And he said, well, technically we are. Yes, you've got cirrhosis. And I was dumbstruck, absolutely dumbstruck. Nobody had mentioned that to me at all. And I just had visions of, losing blood and dying very suddenly and very quickly. And he smiled and he had a medical student with me, and he started to ask the medical student about what signs you might notice in someone with liver problems. And I remember thinking, hello, I'm here. So the conversation came back to me, and I really wanted specific information about my condition, how far on it was, and what I could do about it. The consultant really seemed to be willing to give me as much time as I wanted, but he really wasn't giving me much specific information apart from telling me I had cirrhosis. He said the best thing to do was to lose a bit of weight, take a bit more exercise. And the first time I'd ever heard it, he said, drink coffee. And I didn't drink coffee. I'm a tea Jenny through and through. But he indicated to me that research really shows that coffee has a protective function with the liver, and if I could take about 3 cups of coffee a day, then that would really be advisable. So I agreed to do that. I said, obviously, like most people in Britain, I know the advice about taking exercise, I know the advice about keeping your weight at a healthy level, but like a lot of people, I've obviously not done that well enough, or I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in just now. What help might be available to help me address that? And he said, well, there isn't really much help. What we do is we monitor you in clinic every 6 months and do a FibroScan every 6 months. And he said for some people we would refer them to weight management, or maybe look at a gastric band or a gastric sleeve. But he said your BMI isn't sufficiently concerning that we would do that. So really it's something you could manage yourself. And he realised by this point that it was almost 6 months since I'd had a FibroScan. So the action that he agreed to take at that point was to refer me for another FibroScan, and that the clinic would be in touch with me in around 6 months. And that's the last I heard from him, apart from a letter that I received subsequent to that appointment. And the letter indicated that my lifestyle changes seemed to have had some improvement on my enzymes, and that I should just continue with what I'd been doing up to that point. So within a few days, I decided that I needed to seek out some information. And the one organisation that I seemed to be coming up with was the British Liver Trust. So I began to access the website, and I looked at the words that related to me: non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cirrhosis. But the bit that I found most useful really was people's stories. I I can't remember the names of the people whose stories I looked at or listened to, but I was eternally grateful to them because they just seemed human. They just seemed like me. They seemed to come from all walks of life, up and down the country, various ages. And I found that really helpful. It made me feel not so alone. So I got my information, basic information from the website, and I quickly got in touch with the person who was organising the groups at the time and asked to be invited along to any groups that seemed to be relevant. And I got a reply really quickly. It felt like a huge step to be joining an online support group for a specialist health problem when I'd just been sent away from the hospital. But I thought it's incumbent on me to find more information about this. So I joined that first group, and I'm really glad I did. The first group I went to, there weren't very many people there. There were maybe just about 7, and subsequent groups I've been to have tended to have more, but that was a fairly small group. And there was a guy who talked at the group, and he was indicating that he had been diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That's a bit of a mouthful. and that his fitness had been, he looked very lean, to be honest. That's the first thing that struck me. But he was acknowledging that he wasn't very fit and didn't take much exercise. And the facilitator of the group drew him in. He was a bit diffident and said that today he'd received a medal and would he like to tell us about it. So he told the group that he'd just completed a virtual walk from Land's End to Johnny Groats and he'd received a medal, and it's over 1,000 miles. So to me, that just seemed amazing. Here was this man saying that he barely used to exercise and he was very unfit and he just walked over 1,000 miles. So that was the thing I took away mainly from that first group was, I suppose, the sense of other people are in the same boat, but also there are innovative and imaginative ways to deal with this. And I'm going to find out about this virtual walking malarkey. And I thought I'll do the same thing. I'll go the full hog, the full length of Britain, Land's End to John the Groats. And you just walk or cycle or swim as much as you want on a daily, weekly, whatever basis you want. And the app automatically collates how far you've gone, and you get electronic postcards depending on where you are on the journey. So that felt a really positive and concrete, constructive step to take. And I also began to think and reflect about my lifestyle. How had I got to this point of having this diagnosis of cirrhosis? I mean, I told a few friends and some of my family, and they were absolutely shocked because I met my husband doing the Pennine Way. I've enjoyed long distance walking, and I'm not someone that doesn't do exercise. I do, and I do eat a pretty healthy diet. So how did this happen? And I think I began to realize that, well, lifestyle, what causes your lifestyle? And often it's factors going on in your life. And for me, I think I was really stressed. I'd been very stressed for on a sustained period for a number of years. I'd worked in social work for 30 years. And I suppose I was burnt out by the time I gave up work. I then swiftly moved on to looking after my mum and my daughter, who had more significant health problems than me. And I suppose my way of dealing with stress all my life has been to reach for a bag of crisps if I'm feeling angry, or to scoff a packet of biscuits if I'm feeling tired. And it's difficult to be honest about that, just how much emotional eating you can do to self-soothe. You know, I didn't take to alcohol, but I suppose I was using snack food as a way of managing difficult emotions. So I began to think about that and how I could challenge myself to do things differently. And I'm going to try and find things to do that distract me from eating, because by and large, I think my diet was quite healthy. It was the additional things I was eating in between meals, and particularly in the evening. So I've started going, well, wild swimming, as they call it, sea swimming. I live near the sea and there is a group. I've also started learning a language. I've started to do some Italian most days, and also I've added in a bit of Gaelic. Um, I mean, who would think that that would help you manage a liver disorder? Nobody would. But in a funny sort of way, it just gives me something creative to do. It makes me feel that I've accomplished something in a day, and it gives me another go to, a bit of a routine in my day. And I've tried to recruit people to help me with that. So my daughters are now signed up for the virtual walking, and we plot each other's journey and encourage each other. And I've always enjoyed taking pictures and made it part of my walking. I like taking pictures of the landscape. I like taking close-up pictures of moss or flowers, mainly things in nature, things that make me happy, things I think are beautiful, things that are different, things that are humorous sometimes. And I look at them sometimes on my phone, and that actually acts as a motivator to get back out there and do some more photography, or to redo that walk where I took that picture, or to get down on the beach where when the waves were high. So all these things, I think, are about being compassionate towards myself and really prioritizing looking after myself. And I think it's really helpful to think about what nourishes you in a week and what depletes you. It's just about making small changes and beginning and valuing yourself and just beginning somewhere. But I suppose it's helpful just to really be honest with yourself about what sort of lifestyle you're leading in terms of exercise, in terms of diet, in terms of managing stress, in terms of having enjoyment in your life. The time is now. It's really about looking at what you want out of life and being aware of whether you're actually doing the things that make you happy, that keep you healthy. And I was so busy, and COVID came along. It just was always easier to just keep going like a Duracell bunny. And we get our cars MOT'd, but we don't really get ourselves MOT'd. And maybe we need to do our own MOT from time to time.